Welcome to the Picture This Photography podcast, and today's an extra interesting episode because we have an inside tip from someone that works at Disney, and it appears that Disney is replacing some of their photographers with AI technology. We're going to be talking about that specific story and what we know about it. We're going to be asking the question, could AI technology be replacing more photographers in other fields? Could robots take your photography job? Could they ever really replace a photographer? These are the questions that we're asking, but first let's take a moment to thank our sponsor, Squarespace. They have amazing websites. They have a store that comes with your website, and it's affordable and easy to make your own Squarespace website, including your photography portfolio. You can get a free trial today for 14 days, no credit card needed. Go to squarespace.com/Chelsea. If you decide that you love it, I think you will, use the coupon code Chelsea to get 10% off. Thank you, Squarespace. So this story is blowing my mind. The idea that AI technology could just be replacing photographers, not just in Disney, but anywhere, everywhere.
Yeah, so I had someone inside Disney who asked to remain completely anonymous tip me off that in several of their character photography sessions, they have replaced a professional trained photographer with a camera with AI booth and artificial intelligence booth. And I didn't just take their word for it. I actually went out and looked for additional supporting information, and I found a public website that tracks everything Disney. People are obsessed with little changes at Disney, and they photo document everything. And so these visitors had just noticed that this particular spot that they'd photographed with Mickey and Minnie 100 times before no longer had a person there, but instead just had basically a booth. They had a bookcase, and it's decorated with Disney stuff. And this bookcase is it's 5 feet high. And at 5 feet, it has a camera between the books. And then at 3 feet, it has another camera between the books. So these are two cameras stacked at two different heights. And there's a character assistant there along with Mickey and Minnie or whoever the characters happen to be. And the character assistant has always been there. They kind of get the people posed while the photographer would be taking the picture. Now they get the people posed and they tell them to wait. And then the camera somehow uses artificial intelligence to detect when it should take the picture. There's a flash embedded inside the books that actually fires and illuminates the people a little bit, and the picture is taken. When you come into the room, you're wearing a wrist tag that has a code on it. So you scan this code, and that's what associates your pictures with you as an individual. And then at some point when you go to leave the park, you can pick up your pictures.
Okay. Seems straightforward enough.
It does, but at the same time, it's a little startling because how could a set of two fixed cameras possibly replace a human being photographer, especially in the art that is portrait photography?
If I had to guess, I'd say, it's probably just mostly about getting the most profit possible out of that photo session. And so they don't really need to be that creative. They just need to capture a moment. Not saying I agree with the decision, just saying that's probably Disney's reasoning.
Yeah, and but based on public information from people who are just visiting the different parks, we've seen that they've rolled it out to at least 3 places, but they seem to have done a trial in a single spot. And based on some inside information, it sounds like those trials went well. And what they learned was the robots didn't take better pictures than the people. They couldn't change angles, for example. They couldn't zoom in intelligently. They couldn't capture those candid in-between moments. But those weren't the pictures that were selling anyway. The pictures that were selling were the very straightforward, the whole family kind of stands next to each other. And I think my guess is when park visitors come, they just want a memory. We all went to Disney. Here, we can prove it. We'll look back on this in 10, 20 years and we'll have a good memory. And so that's probably worth it to them. But they did not necessarily benefit from the candid moments that human beings were able to capture. And those that did weren't enough to upset the profit margins for Disney, to offset the additional cost of the photographers. My informant suggested that they were using 2 Nikon D850s stacked vertically.
That makes sense to me because Nikon sent us to Disney for a product launch, and we learned that they have close ties with Disney. They work together.
Yeah, and the Disney photographers have always used Nikon because of that relationship. So it does make sense. The D850, maybe that makes sense. It's a very high-end professional camera, and they probably don't need the weather sealing and all that since it's in a bookcase, but it is 45 megapixels, and that would give them the ability to print bigger, but also give them the ability to perhaps crop more, which might offset the ability of the human photographer to be able to recompose. So here, this extra detail could be used to just basically compose the shot in post and allow either a robot AI to crop tightly around the family or a human being in a central location to do it. I don't know how the automatic timing of actually taking the picture works, but I did see complaints that the timing didn't seem to be great because the people having their pictures taken know because the flash is going off and they kind of be like, we weren't really prepared for it to happen. So I'd be curious if anybody out there has more details about the mechanics of how this system actually works, because my informant doesn't happen to know the little ins and outs, or at least they didn't let me know. One way it could work was they could use the HDMI output of these cameras and monitor it from a central location, and that would allow a person to do it, or the HDMI output could feed into a computer that can do facial recognition and look for everybody's eyes being open. Like cameras today can do that.
Don't give Disney any ideas, Tony.
I'm just saying, for a price, I could design this whole system and you could get rid of all your photographers.
Are you going to sell out? You absolutely could.
I'm turning against the humans.
Were you ever one? Because you just gave the most robot explanation for family portraits. They were like, families go to Disney and then they take pictures and say, here, I can prove it.
I, for one, welcome our new robot overlords.
I don't. I will fight them.
And if you look at it from Disney's perspective, I don't know what they pay their photographers, their character photographers, but I would guess it would be in the ballpark of $50,000 a year. And the gear that they spec'd out probably cost about $10,000 one time and will probably operate for...
Dang.
Places like this will often use the same camera for 10 years. They don't need to replace it anytime soon. And the D850 would certainly have plenty of longevity, especially if they're using the electronic shutter. Could go on for decades. So you're looking at a pretty big cost savings that, not to mention you don't have to pay like benefits or worry about people being sick or quitting and not showing up at the last minute. Like robots are just kind of more reliable and easier than humans.
Dang. How are you going to throw your own human counterparts under the bus like that, Tony?
I'm not. I am actually, even in places where robots are more efficient than humans, me personally, I feel we should continue to employ humans in those jobs. But I do want to kind of explain it from the perspective of corporations. Corporations care only about profits. Like this is all they see. So speaking about the corporate perspective, here is what corporations always say anytime they replace human jobs with robots. They say, this is actually good news for you humans. You are freed up from having to do a monotonous job. You can now move yourself into higher paying, more creative positions. Yay. Specifically, they always say, we still need people to repair the robots because that's what people love to do. So robot repairman might be a good job for you if you're just getting out of college now.
Would you like to take pictures of families or repair the robot?
And some food for thought. We've definitely in history had robots replace lots of factory jobs, for example. And in the future, we're bound to see it happen more and more. And each time it definitely improves profitability in the short term for corporations. And because of that, it will probably continue to happen because that is what drives corporations. But I think on a deeper level, a more long-term level, there could be negative repercussions. That short-term profitability increase often leads to both short-term and longer-term social services expenses, as the people who are laid off need to perhaps rely on unemployment in the short term. And those increased social services expenses will need to be paid from in taxes. So we could end up seeing higher paid taxes that all of us end up paying in the long term. And when you factor those costs in, I often wonder, like, why not just keep people in the jobs instead of going through this whole cycle in the name of efficiency?
Really biting my tongue. Hard not to get into a social debate on that one. So let's just say after the break, we're going to be asking a broader question. Could AI replace other types of photography? Could they replace sports photographers? And also, I think there's some good news that we have coming up after the break. But first, let's talk about our sponsor, Squarespace. If you're not a robot and you need to show your very non-robot work on your own website and portfolio, you can get your very own Squarespace portfolio today for free. And it's so easy to use. If you can drag and drop, you can make it yourself. It comes with a store, so you can sell your prints or whatever else you sell, whatever other business you're setting this up for. And guess what, Tony? There's also analytics. You know how much I love digging into those charts and numbers and graphs?
I love numbers too.
I know, I've noticed that. So you can get your free trial today. Go to squarespace.com/Chelsea and use the coupon code Chelsea to get 10% off. Thanks, Squarespace.
Thanks, Squarespace.
Okay, so we've been talking about Disney, how an insider has relayed to us that they have replaced some of their human photographers with AI photographers. And now we're going to be talking about how it's not just Disney. There's a lot of AI technology that's eliminating the camera operator and making it just a self-functioning, contained robot photographer with no heart and no feelings. Does that frighten you?
Yeah, it actually does upset me a little bit. You'll often see these products marketed as, this particular one, the Solo Shot 3, this is from their webpage. They say, no cameraman, no problem.
Rude.
Now, that's nice. They didn't say, fire your cameraman, this is cheaper. But that's kind of what it is.
Yeah.
It is a camera on a pivoting pan tilt zoom head that will follow you. You wear a little wristband and it says, okay, that's the guy I'm following. And wherever you go, it rotates around and keeps you in the frame. If you move far away, it'll zoom in on the action. So you could go surfing or kiteboarding or skateboarding.
Look, they're not sponsoring us or anything, but that actually sounds pretty cool.
Yeah, right. I know. As I was looking into it, I was like, oh man, I kind of want that. That sounds awesome.
Okay, that's beside the point.
So that's not every one of these sold is going to be replacing a human job, because a lot of these will be bought by people who would never have hired a photographer.
Yeah.
But some of them will be bought by people who would have had a cameraman or a photographer, and in those cases, it will actually be replacing a job. So it's opening up some opportunities, but also displacing some real workers.
Let's talk about some of the technology that's available now. We have auto exposure, auto focus, we have auto panning and tilting, zooming, we have face finding, eye detection, auto eye focus. And we also have the ability for technology to choose the sharpest shot, take a bunch of shots and choose the sharpest one, to detect open eyes and smiles, and also automatic portrait post-processing, right? You take a picture on your phone and it automatically smooths your skin and makes you look a little bit better. All of that technology is available now. What's to keep them from just implementing that into some other future device that makes the whole process automatic?
Well, they value the human input and creativity over profitability and ease of use. No, they don't.
They don't.
So let's get into AI sports photography here. And you and I had this discussion. We kind of batted this idea around of a theoretical system that would be easy to use, because you play soccer and our daughter plays soccer, but there's not professional photographers there usually. And so we thought, what about some inexpensive, simple to set up system that could do the job of a professional photographer or videographer, but would be inexpensive? And so we kind of what would you say?
What would I say? I would say we kind of just sketched out an idea for what the system would look like. Keep in mind, we don't watch sports.
So first, imagine it's a kid's soccer game.
Okay.
But they're serious. They want like real feedback on their performance. They have family members who might want to see the game from remote locations. The kids themselves will, for vanity's sake, want to replay their best moments, or for learning's sake, might want to replay their worst moments so they can learn from it. Let's take some 180 cameras, like cameras that capture a really wide angle of view, and put them midfield on either side of the field. And then maybe we stick a couple of GoPro style cameras and stick them on the goals so they could get views of the goalies. Imagine that these cameras could all stream their video centrally to a little computer device over by the coach's bench. And this computer device is just constantly recording the video from all of these cameras all at once. Take some trackers, some little wireless trackers, and put them on the wrists or ankles of each of the players. Now that computer knows where in the field each one of those players are, and if it's interested in a particular player, it can tag that particular camera's video feed, not just the whole video feed, but a particular part of the video. So if our daughter is running across the field and she runs across 4 different cameras, it'll be able to track her, and even through the use of cropping the high resolution video, be able to just pan and follow her as she runs across the field. As we know from when we do watch professional sports, it's very easy to track a ball on a field. So the computer would be able to track the ball as it moved, but also be able to track every time it was handed off from one player to another. Every time somebody touches the ball, there's an interception, or if it crosses the goal, that would be easy to capture. And because the computer is recording everything constantly, it could go back in time. If somebody scores a goal, it could go back 3, 5, 10 seconds and determine all the moments that led up to that goal and stitch together a multi-camera video clip of that moment as if it had been able to predict the future, something that real photographers can't do.
And if all of this seems like overkill for kids' sports, you don't have a kid in kids' sports.
Yeah,
because
right?
They're intense. Yeah.
And I think the greatest part of all of this is that none of this requires particularly expensive equipment. Little 180 cameras cost a couple of $100s, including like streaming wirelessly.
Yeah.
And I really think smartphone could do most of the processing of the feed. And so you're looking at a kit that could be assembled pretty inexpensively. And it has lots of other benefits too. Like it could stream the entire game on the web. So family who lived in another country could watch a game. They could have it switch the camera based on wherever the ball was, or they could just decide that they wanted to watch their granddaughter, and the system could show them a personalized feed of their favorite player. It's pretty amazing when you think about the potential that it could do. After the game, the coach could go through the video and with the players, talk to them about the mistakes that they made. And he could assign them homework to watch themselves the entire game. This seems far out, but once I wrote that down, I just Googled it to see if anything like this existed. And almost that exact system exists already today. It's a system called Trace.
Once again, no sponsorship, just another company that we found. And it's almost that exact thing. You put trackers on kids, it takes footage all around the field, and they are pitching it as a training thing. You know, then your players can see where they should have been, what passes went right, what formations went wrong, and how to better set up plays. So this is about training athletes how to better work on the field, since it can be hard to see yourself and understand from a different perspective what your playing looks like. And it's pretty expensive. It's like $1,700 to rent it.
For 10 games, right?
Yeah, for 10 games. So that technology is there, and that implementation of that technology exists, which tells me all of this AI photographer stuff isn't that far off, isn't that far in the future. People are already finding practical ways to use the technology.
And knowing technology like I do, I know the cost will drop rapidly.
Can I tell you an interesting anecdote, though? My daughter's soccer club, she's in a Premier League, which, if you're familiar with that, you pay more money to have your kids play in these leagues that play tournaments. They did offer that a human come to the game. I'm specifying human versus robot now, which is weird, but that a person would come to the game and take pictures and video of each individual player for these same purposes, to see how each player is acting on the field. I pitched this exact technology to the soccer club, wrote to them, wrote an email, said this exists, and they're kind of like, I don't know, this seems kind of expensive. So they were open to the human, but not open to this. They didn't say no, definitely, but I just thought that that was an interesting real-world insight into how people will react.
Yeah, that's interesting. So this system right now that would cost $175 per game. I think at most it could get cheaper and higher volumes for bigger clubs.
Yeah.
And surely that's less than what a person would charge, especially factoring in post-processing and such, right?
I think you could just do it for one game, though. So it would have been less expensive on the whole.
Good point. Yeah, and that system will email every single player their own personalized long cut of the game every single time they touch the ball. It emails them.
Yeah.
That's not science fiction. That's real, and it's available today.
So we talked about that application for kids sports. You know, some of that technology is out there. If you watch American football games, they're tracking everyone. They're overlaying graphics on the field. But I was thinking this technology could be used to replace Olympic photographers. If you could put cameras all over the arena, track movement, track the athletes, why couldn't it? I mean, I personally think you can't replace the human emotion that goes into it. But as we said, corporations, people looking at the bottom line, the money, might think that you can put cameras on the pole of the pole vaulter or on the bars where the pole vaulter goes over and get a more interesting picture. If it's being used for kids' soccer games, why not the Olympics?
Robots have this distinct advantage of being able to process 1,000 pictures instantly, whereas humans actually take some time and incur some additional expense. You can buy a robot once and work it for years, whereas a human, you have to pay on a kind of a continual basis.
Yeah, but
they always show up to work.
Yeah, but a professional Olympic photographer, I mean, they're pros and they're capturing these moments that are special that a robot might not even know was special. But we started thinking about what other photography jobs AI might be able to replace. And so we started thinking about AI family portraits and what that would entail. Could this AI technology take a family portrait photographer's job? And possibly we designed a little AI robot for family portraits. And by designed, I mean we just wrote down some ideas. You could install...
Let's just call it an app.
Just call it an app.
Just an iPhone app that could do all of this using existing technology.
Yeah, so you could have this photo app where it knows where you are in the world. It could use all of the existing photos. All of the photos that you take on your phone are GPS tagged if you've opted into that. It could know the most popular locations within a certain radius and ask you, how far do you want to go for your family portrait shoot? It could show you existing photos and say, which place would you prefer to go? It could use Google Earth data to help you find that spot. And it could also use the weather app to identify times that you should go for lighting, the weather. It could use your schedule and your calendar to find out the best times for you, not just the best time for the weather. And then it could use all of the existing technology that we were talking about, the face detection and everything that your phone has to take your photo.
It could be as simple as you saying, we have 3 kids and 2 adults, and the phone could go through a catalog of existing poses that it has and give you options from serious to creative to silly, and you could pick the best pose and then kind of match whatever it has on screen.
Why are we giving them ideas for replacing us?
I always think that it's best for people to be prepared for the future to know what might be coming. And I don't flatter myself enough to think that I am actually changing the future when I predict these things. I also wanted to bring up the possibility that iPhones today have a face mapping and 3D mapping feature. And you could, while taking a group portrait, have each person walk up to the camera so it could map and 3D model their face. They could turn around. And then as they stepped back and into the wide angle shot, it could actually use that 3D mapping to improve the resolution or to slightly change and fix their expression. So if little Bobby wasn't smiling when he should have, the smartphone today using existing technology could make him smile. Could also,
my gosh, that's terrifying.
Whiten teeth, remove stuff from their nose.
Disgusting.
And all the stuff photographers today have to do manually, it could happen pretty automatically.
Can you imagine what those first versions of that technology would look like if you're adding a fake smile and whitening a kid's teeth? Like, there's real nightmare potential there.
This is true. That 3D mapping would also give it the ability to create as much or as little bokeh if you wanted to. It could even do impossible bokeh where, 3 rows of people are perfectly in focus, but the background is a little bit blurred, things you couldn't do with a traditional camera.
Okay. So we've talked about what Disney is doing. We've talked about how other fields of photography could potentially be replaced by AI technology, but what did we miss? What do you guys think? We do think that you miss out on the human element when you remove a human photographer, but as we talked about, a lot of people only care about the cost or the profits. So what is next? Are they actually going to try to replace every kind of photographer, or do you think we're safe? We can't be replaced. We're humans. What do you think, Tony?
I think it's going to be a period of really rapid change. And I do think some jobs will disappear. Many have already disappeared, but I think we have to all be ready for that change and be thinking 5 years into the future if you want to be happy and productive.
Get your ice cream and your tissues ready. The future's rough. Thank you, Squarespace, for making this episode possible. Once again, if you'd like your own Squarespace portfolio to put your pictures up, you can go to squarespace.com/Chelsea and use the coupon code Chelsea to get 10% off. We'll see you all next week. Our next episode is going to be about, I think I'll keep it a secret.
Okay.
We got it, but I'm going to keep it a little secret.
All right. Thanks, guys, and thanks, Squarespace.